Another secret Israeli operation could have been underway in Christchurch, only brought down by the February quake.
The one who was killed in the van, the driver, was found when they were examining the bodies at the morgue to be carrying 5 or 6 passports.
It's also not true to say that the individual that was found in the van deceased was carrying 5 passports. He had 1 passport on him.
Officials in Israel also denying any wrongdoing.
Former comment of the Israeli Foreign Ministry is that it's just a science fiction story. It has nothing to do with facts on the ground.
But the SIS did investigate the unusual behaviour of Israelis, including the possible hacking of the National Police computer.
There is, in the view of those agencies, no link between those individuals and the Israeli intelligence agencies.
7 years ago, there was. In July 2004, Eli Kara and Uri Kelman, supposed agents of the Israeli Secret Service, were found guilty of passport fraud. They were sentenced to 6 months in prison and fined for identity theft of a wheelchair-bound cerebral palsy sufferer. The incident caused a huge rift with Israel, with then Prime Minister Helen Clark imposing high-level diplomatic sanctions.
The last thing we want is any reputation that people can get a fraudulent passport here and go off and commit terrorist acts.
Another man still wanted here in relation to that passport operation, Zev Barkin, was named as a suspect in the killing of a Hamas diplomat in a Dubai hotel. That January 2010 murder hit the headlines when police released video of the covert operation taking place. The assassins found to have fake passports, this time from Europe and Australia. Passports, a travel tool we Kiwis take for granted.
A New Zealand passport would not really raise an eyebrow in any international border.
What is raising eyebrows is whether Israeli agents were back here or not.
International security analyst Paul Buchanan used to work for the Pentagon and the US State Department. In other words, like, he knows his stuff. He joins us now. OK, John Key said, it's all right, no evidence, nothing to worry about. Should we not be talking about this then? Nothing happened.
Well, certainly it's in his interest that we stop talking about it, because this could escalate into a diplomatic row of some proportions. You know, I think we have to take his word at it. If it turns out that Prime Minister Netanyahu called him 4 times but only got through once or twice, if in fact there was no concerns about the hasty departure of the 3 survivors when their friend is lying crushed in a van, with no discernible emotion about that particular fact, and if, as it turns out, they had no indications that he had any more than 2 passports, because although in the clip he mentioned 1, the 3 departing Israelis handed over an Israeli passport on their way out that belonged to him. And so the question is, well, if it isn't 5 and we know of 2, is it more than 2, in which case things could get hairy. But if all of that is true, that he's absolutely correct in his assertions, 2 questions come to mind. First of all, what were the other things that triggered suspicion so that the SIS and the police independently conducted investigations, and he, as the Minister of Security Intelligence, would have known about these investigations from the onset?
There must be, look, we all know, there must be things that diplomacy or security require a Prime Minister to keep secret. Could he be being, if he says we've found no evidence, that doesn't necessarily mean they weren't here, does it? It just says they haven't got any evidence.
Exactly. I mean, I think that in some sense, again, from a diplomatic perspective, his obfuscation in his first comments is somewhat justified, because you want to put this to bed as soon as possible, because the potential repercussions are major. Had he come out and said, look, we looked into it, we found nothing untoward, and that's the end of story, I think the story might have died. But as it is, the obfuscation itself, the fact that he said it was not in the national interest, espionage on domestic soil, that actually is sort of a core national interest. The fact that he went down that path raised more suspicions than it allayed them.
What about the theory, Paul, that, look, the Israelis have come here once before, probably thought we were an easy touch, got caught. Why would they risk coming back again?
Well, that's the question of the moment, particularly since the Israeli government gave assurances that a passport scam like the 2004 scam would never happen again. There's many things that could come to mind, but I think that one of the most interesting for us here in New Zealand is the value of the New Zealand passport for covert intelligent operations. And as was mentioned in the clip, New Zealand passports are welcome anywhere, including conflict zones, including zones in which there are suspicions of intent on the part of others. And apparently, they're worth their weight in gold when it comes to intelligence operations.
Are our intelligence services up to the job?
On this one, I don't think they can be blamed for not responding or responding late. That raises some interesting questions of professionalism and competence, and if in fact it is true that the leak came out of the SIS, that this story originated from a leak within the SIS, that talks to some bureaucratic rifts between the intelligence services and the government that won't be resolved anytime soon.
See, look, if you go back and look at the Rainbow Warrior, the French came over here thinking we're a bunch of yokels and, you know, they could move in and out. The Israelis obviously thought they weren't going to have any trouble as well. Do we have a reputation of being a bit, you know, slightly backward?
The record of the SIS is quite mixed, but one thing that's happened under the national government is it has worked very hard to improve its security ties with the Western Alliance. And that includes things like the Wellington Declaration of November 2010 with the U.S., but more importantly, also improving the relationship with Israel in the wake of the previous incident. So this warming of security ties would indicate that either the SIS and the police and other counter-espionage agencies are focused on other things, the Muslim community, the Rugby World Cup, things of that nature, and have overlooked the possibility that the Israelis are really keen on New Zealand passports, if that is, in fact, what has happened.
We're a passport farm. Paul Buchanan, thanks for your time tonight.
My pleasure.